everyone, and thank you for coming this evening. The first thing that we need to do is approve the meeting agenda, and we have a couple of amendments. 9.3, add approval of audit report as presented. 10.4, to approve the long-term math substitute, and 10.5, to rescind hire of custodian.
I make a motion for all of those, yeah.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 5.1 is, 5.0 is community comments. Community comments is an opportunity for the public to address the board on an item included in this agenda in accordance with the guidelines printed at the end of the agenda. And so, we have got one person that signed up for community comments, and that's Maren Webb, school wellness policy. Hi.
Good evening. I think this is a new record for me having 2 months in a row. So I'm Maren Webb. I work for the Sacha County Clinic. I work on the statewide health improvement partnership, the SHIP program. And I was here last month and just reminded you what the wellness policy and what the committee does. I realized after the fact I had forgotten to mention that part of the reason I was here and then with the committee is that we are able to help support the school and the wellness committee on implementing the wellness policy. So that's part of the thing that we're not just advocating for health of your kids, but we want to help you help the district in whatever way that makes sense to do that. In the past, that's included things like the flower gardens in elementary school, the school gardens, some of the meal program work. So I just wanted to say that I think the draft looks great. I'm really excited for the future of wellness work in the school. I had the last meeting that's happened 2 weeks ago now. Great teacher, much teachers showed up, great ideas and enthusiasm from all the students. So I'm really excited about the future of the wellness work. I appreciate your support of the policy, and I will try to be heard back with my audit for that portion of the meeting, but if for some reason it's not that, that's fine. But thank you, and I don't know if are there any, I know I asked last time, but any questions? And also, just so you know too, I have a colleague, Hartley Lucero. Her focus is more on the healthy eating work, and so there may be points when we would pull her in to help assist with school stuff as well. But just know that we look forward to continuing that partnership. It's been going for many years.
Thank you, Maren. Okay, 6.0 are student highlights. 6.1, the Climb Author Celebration Day.
Here, Nelson. Not sure if they made
Somebody was
these.
playing
They both brought in.
Hey, he's on our way down. So I just show these to the board. I just wanted to show my appreciation for Mrs. Veras and for the students that work with her every day in the Climb program. These are 2 projects the kindergartners made it to program. We usually have the office celebration. A lot of times kindergartners will use Legos in the classroom to create stories, and setting characters. And in this particular example, she had them create an algorithm and a program code to work their way through a maze, and they created Legos to do that. And so she does a lot of creative things, and the kids do too to expand their skills. I don't know if we celebrate enough what she's been doing this year for us, because it's pretty neat to think of these little 5-year-olds.
Could you interpret what this means?
Well,
Here, let's look at this.
This is an area.
What's
It's amazing.
Oh, yeah, I believe it's most likely the direction that the character would go. They would go this way first, the direction of the arrow, so it's taking steps to get to the end goal.
These are future computer programs.
Great, and do we know what the happy face is, or the
The
star?
I think it means a very advanced symbol or something.
Thank you.
Sarah, the other display case is when you come in the door by the garden, there's
Oh,
a
but I saw
pond
too.
yes,
Great.
by the old, the very, very old elementary office. The building is just one entrance.
Thank you. That's really exciting. Okay, 7.0 administrative reports, 7.1 principal report highlight item.
All right, well, this is my last report here, and got almost 40 observations done already this year. Got a few more yet to go before by next Thursday. Things have been going good. Got a tentative schedule, first draft of a schedule set for the next school year already too. So that's been done. And Mr. Hoffman and Mr. DeWitt. Mr. DeWitt's gonna have fun trying to put the rest of the pieces of that together. But I would say if it were up to me, it would be about 90% done. Just to be fitting the elementary schedule in there would be about all that would need to be done. So other than that, that's about it. That's all I got.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. 7.2 assistant principal's report highlight item.
Apologies to the board for not getting this in the packet in time, so there's
You know you're kind of busy.
I guess the item to highlight is kind of what Mr. Nelson was talking on. The thing that's been taken, majority of my time has been handing out administrative items for continuity with him. He talked about the scheduling for next year, making sure I'm up to speed on that. Requisition process and budgeting, I appreciate Ms. Backland's and Ms. Buskala's help with that, along with the Cindy's. And the discipline and truancy things he's been doing at the high school and middle school level. So that's taking place quite a bit recently. Any other questions on here? So.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Superintendent's report.
We did, Ms. Backlund and the rest of the food service group completed the food service audit at the end of November. And overall, we did well there. There's some items that we need to address, and we're in the process of addressing all of those items. And we have had our first community storytelling event, which we feel went well, and thank you to the folks. Lacey Smith was one of the lead teachers helping to organize that and bring that to our community and to our school. A couple people here who attended, and it was for the folks who attended. We had over a dozen of our staff there, 2 board members. Ms. Jensen and Ms. Lundy were there, and overall, I believe it was a successful first outing, and we're going to get the word out for our next event. So
It was really fun.
Yeah. yeah, the time went quickly. Actually, it was,
Yeah.
It was.
it was very nicely done.
Okay. One question I'm going to ask, because I
Oh,
don't
yes.
see Mr. Nelson here. Bus garage.
Oh, sorry.
I
was
saw-
gonna do
I
that-
saw
I was
that.
going to do that in the,
Are you gonna
in
do
the
that?
report. But just to let you know, Mr. Nelson showed he's planning on coming. He had to do some busing, but he's planning to come. But he showed me a picture of one of our buses in the garage. They have the automatic, whatever the
Garage door opener?
garage door openers are now working. The garage doors have been working, but now the openers
Openers.
are now hooked up
Great.
and working. So that's a positive thing. There's still a few items, to say the least, that are outstanding, but we are now knowing that the temperatures are going to really start dropping. We're having our fleet indoors, which is
We can turn the heat on now?
the heat's there.
It's,
The heat system is all there.
the heat system is all there.
Mr. Gettle.
Propane, we were waiting on propane yesterday. I don't know if it came today or not.
We did get the okay as far as installation of our tanks
Right.
from the fire marshal, so things are falling into place. They just need to get here.
Electricians had everything wired, and they're waiting for propane. As the propane gets hooked up, just have to try to fire them up.
Propane gets here, then
Yep.
the plumbing will get taken care of, and obviously the electrical components.
Ms. Como planning on being there tomorrow?
North Shore,
North Shore, oil and propane.
they were planning on being there. When did it snow? Tuesday was it snow? Yesterday.
Yesterday, Wednesday.
Yesterday, but
Right.
it must have been because of the snow they decided not to come up. So they're hoping today, and I haven't talked to Tom.
And Mr. Nelson said he'd be, like I said, he'd do some busing, so he'd be.
Okay. Great. Okay, 8.0 is the consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that anybody would like pulled off for discussion? If there isn't, then I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alright, 9.0 are discussion and action items. So we are looking for someone to fill the District 5 seat for the remaining term that ends December 31st, 2018. So at this point, I'm just gonna have, before we do the nomination and things, I'm just gonna have Mr. Dan Shirley introduce himself. And so Dan, if you just wanna stand up, introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself and then why you'd like to be on the board.
You should come this way a little because the camera's right there.
Okay. We do videotape, so
Stand up by Mr. Gevel.
yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Thank you very much. So I'm Dan Shirley, and I live in Tofty, at the end of the Sawmill Trail. I'm a relatively new member to the community. We moved to Cook County a couple of years ago, although my wife was born and raised here, and her family, and so my wife's family has a long history in Cook County, although I'm a relative newcomer. Anyways, I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then lived in western Montana before moving here. I'm a chemist by training. I helped start a biotech company in Montana and spent a number of years growing that, raising money, and then we decided to move back here, take over my wife's family business, Sawmill Canoe Outfitters. So I've got a lot invested in the county, just from family history, and then also owning a business here that's thriving. And so I just have a young daughter who's 18 months old, and I'm a product of public schools myself. I think it's really important. It's important to have people that are willing to work hard to keep it around and keep it high quality. And you quickly learn in Cook County that somebody's got to do that work. So you have to wear a lot of hats, and I'm ready to do that here. So so I would be honored to join and help out.
Great.
So,
Thank you, Dan.
Thank
Now you're off the hot seat.
all right.
Kind of.
Kind of.
I'll make a motion to nominate Dan Shirley for the school board seat for District 5.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, and so to do this the proper way, I do have to ask if there are any other nominations for that seat. So I have to ask, are there any other nominations for that seat?
Just twice. I always thought it was three.
I can say it one more time just in case. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations for the District 5 seat? Okay, with there being none, I'm gonna close the nominations for the District 5 seat. Okay? Ready? Any other questions? Otherwise, all in favor of appointing Dan Shirley for the District 5 seat, please say aye. Aye. If there's any opposed, please say nay. All right, and it passes with 4 aye votes. And we will welcome Dan in January. We look forward to having you join us, and that will all, the swearing in and everything will happen in January. So
Great.
thank you and welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we'll move on, and 9.2 is audit presentation from Whipley. And do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Tim Bradshaw
Tim, okay.
from Whipley, out of Duluth.
Oh, I
Okay.
can grab it. I didn't know where we were.
And we got a big pack of
Great
info
stuff.
everyone has.
Yeah.
So this is
Need you want one?
This is what we're looking at.
That's what we're looking at.
Just the, oh,
This is
Yeah, well, I should probably.
the other one you can leave if you need to.
We have
Yes, lots of library.
Everyone can have credit.
I had last year's.
That's what most of our shop is.
Well, I do have to reserve a lot of.
Alright. So the packet of information I handed you includes the PowerPoint presentation, which I don't have hooked up, the communication letter, the student activity report, and the financial statement. We were here back at the end of October, if I remember correctly. Well, I was here for 3 days completing the audit. But the team consisted of, on page 2, Deborah Medlin, who has 32 years of experience. She would be the partner on the job. Jennifer Smith, the senior manager, 17 years of experience, and myself, Tim, 4 years of experience. And I believe this was my 4th year in Cook County as well. So, our responsibility on page 3 is to issue an opinion on the financial statements. Basically just come in and make sure all the numbers are correct, the financial practices are sound, internal controls are good. Another thing that we do is some testing of Minnesota legal compliance, and if Cook County had federal expenditures in excess of $750,000, we would have to issue a report on federal compliance. Expenditures were not in excess of $750,000, so we got to avoid the dreaded single audit. Yeah, that would have a whole nother loop to things. But next page 4 is our results, unmodified opinion on the financial statements. Basically, that just implies that everything was good, that the financial practices are sound, the numbers were good. There were a few adjustments, but they weren't big enough for us to really worry about. The significant deficiencies over financial reporting, I think every year we have to issue that here just because the lack of segregation of duties, it's Lori and Pam doing everything, Lori having control over everything. The cost of adding another person really doesn't outweigh the benefit. You do a good job, separating duties, but we will probably have a very hard time getting rid of that significant deficiency. And the second one is financial statement presentation. That's just because we assist in the preparation of the financials. We draft them along with the reports, and you approve them, or Lori approves them, and ultimately the board approves them, hopefully tonight. I will say though, from last year to this year, major improvement on that report. Last year we had a material weakness for audit adjustments, which means we found some stuff that was either missed or was there that shouldn't have been. There were some compliance issues with Minnesota legal compliance. 5 of them last year, none this year, all taken care of. So hats off to Lori and Pam and Tom probably too. If I know he's not here right now. But on to the next page. And this is all kind of going along with that first packet of paper that I gave you, the required communication letter. Basically just says our responsibility is to conduct an audit under generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards, because the school district is a government. Plan, scope, and timing, like I said earlier, we were here October 25th to the 27th, wrap up in the office after. Significant accounting policies are outlined. I don't think there were really any changes other than implementation of GASB number 82, which didn't affect any numbers. It was just some disclosure related stuff related to pensions. On to the next page. We have to talk about management judgments and accounting estimates. The big ones in the financial statements are useful lives of capital assets, which are determined by the district, severance liability, OPEB liability, and net pension liability. Those are all determined by actuaries. The net pension liability is PARA and TRA. That was a couple years ago. That had to be added to the government-wide financial statements, and It created some funny looking disclosures, but yeah, it is what it is, and we have to do it by standards. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. I said earlier there were some audit adjustments, but they weren't material, so we aren't reporting them, and there weren't any uncorrected adjustments. Oh, only thing I'll highlight on page 7, no disagreements with management. Pam and Lori were very helpful. Any question I asked, they answered it readily. Anything I needed, they got me support for it. So again, great job. I think that it might have been the most efficient that the audit has been since I've been on it. Let's see what else here. I will go down to the other matters. Only thing that we really found that we reported, it's not a finding, but related to student activity accounts. Minnesota Department of Education updated their manual for, let's see, is it manual for accounting for activities or activity fund accounting? And there were some changes to what needed to be done with student activities. So if a student activity account doesn't have activity for a year, it needs to either be closed out and the funds transferred to another account, or the advisor needs to come up with a plan to say why it needs to stay open. So there were 11 accounts here, which was a lot, but I think it's been addressed, taken care of. And really, I think every district that we worked with this year had an issue with that, just because most of them didn't know about it. So it is what it is. Move on, correct it. Yeah. So now to the fun stuff. Page 9 is all about student enrollment. We don't usually break out the charter amount in this, but because the charter amount is so high in the Cook County District, we had to add it. But you know, you can kind of look from 2015 to 2017. Enrollment numbers have been increasing. Resident numbers increased by 15 from last year to this year. So, I mean, on a trend perspective, it looks like the district is growing, at least according to the numbers that MDE provided us with. Next page breaks out the resident and non-resident by, I guess, grade. Pre-K, regular kindergarten, 1st to 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th through 12th. Again, same numbers, just kind of a different format. We go on to page 11. This is where we do a calculation of general fund expenditures per ADM, per student, and compare it to the state. If you look from all the way back to 2013 through, 2016, Cook County spends more per student than the state does on a statewide basis. The numbers are not available for statewide for 2017 just because they haven't gotten the final numbers in yet. But I'm assuming that that number will still be higher than the statewide general fund expenditures per ADM. I don't know how you want to look at that. I think it's a good thing. You're investing more into your students than the state has. Some districts can't meet the statewide minimum. So I would look at it as a good thing. And that number does not include capital expenditures. So it truly is direct costs to the students, or related to the students. Next page. Again, this comes straight from the state. General fund expenditures by object type. Trends are pretty much the same, I guess, for a proportion basis. Salaries are going to be the highest amount. Next to that is benefits. Purchase services, that would include, other districts providing services to you. Supplies and materials, pretty self-explanatory. Capital expenditures, equipment, buildings, and other, that's everything else. The chart just kind of shows that it's the same as prior years, I guess, proportionally, other than the fact that it is going up slightly, but numbers were actually fairly consistent with 2016. So we go to page 13. I'll get into the various fund operations. General fund increased, and I think you already know that. And I know that's been a big initiative of the board. When I talked to Sissy, you were all about did unassigned increase, did unassigned increase.
I did. Actually, that was my first question.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it did increase. This other financing sources item, $69,618. That's a capital lease issued related to a bus. State wants us to record it as revenue. So I mean it is included in that $195,446 net change in fund balance, and so I mean you went from a $539,501 general fund balance at June 30th, 2016, up to almost $735,000. So
So it's the way we want it to go, obviously.
Yeah.
So
So like I said, it was a good year, I think, for the district. And obviously it's December now. This is June 30th. It's a snapshot of a moment in time, but I mean, your goal is to get that June 30th number up, and I would say that you met it. If you turn to page 14, this is kind of the breakdown of that $735,000 fund balance. There's a couple components to it: non-spendable, restricted, assigned, and unassigned. There could also be committed, but this district doesn't have anything committed. Non-spendable would be inventory and prepaid items that'll be expensed in FY18. Restricted, those are all really restricted per the MDE state statute. Deferred maintenance became long-term facilities maintenance. That's why it has a zero balance at June 30th, 2017. So long-term facilities maintenance was new. Medical assistance was also new. Health and safety and safe schools had fund balance deficits at the beginning of the year, but those deficits, I mean, overall decreased, and they are allowed to go into a negative according to the state. Assigned and unassigned also increased, and that's really due to that positive change in fund balance on the previous page. So kind of to tie this into page 15, if you take, we as auditors consider assigned and unassigned all unrestricted fund balance, just because it's not, I mean, the board assigns the fund balance, so if you wanted to unassign it, you technically could. So if you go to page 15, unrestricted fund balance was $777,458 at June 30th, 2017. And this is kind of comparing it to, well, I guess your expenditures. So it's 12% of expenditures, FY17 expenditures. The fund balance policy would say unassigned, the goal is to be 12% of expenditures. The district almost met it. It was about $6,000 short of it, so we had to disclose that you didn't meet your minimum fund balance policy, but you came very close. $6,000 out of as much money as we're talking about is pretty good. So let's see, page 16 on the food service. Another increase in fund balance. I won't get into the details too much, but ending fund balance was $100,249. That's broken out into inventory and restricted for future years. Page 16, community service. Again, pretty large increase in fund balance, $50,974. That's restricted to community education, early childhood family, school readiness, and community service for future years. debt service, that one decreased, but really the activity in debt service is just paying principal and interest on your outstanding debt obligations. The revenues are going to include levies and interest and dividends, really. There is some other financing sources. That number mostly represents amounts paid out of escrow for interest. And again, that fund balance is restricted pretty much for use in debt service, payment of principal and interest. OPEB debt service on page 19. It's very minimal activity in there. Increased by $91. Again, restricted fund balance at year end. And
say what OPEB stands for.
other post-employment benefits. Yeah. And on page 20, the building construction fund. That had a zero fund balance at the beginning of the year. The debt issuance revenue and expenditures related to that are recorded in that fund. The debt issuance is recorded as other financing sources, so that fund balance at year end is $6,282,123, all restricted for capital projects. So, and I think that money is, well, from what I understand, is going to be spent just kind of not on a building, but on just miscellaneous repairs, bus garage, other items. So some of it was spent before year end, but there's still quite a bit left, as indicated by the fund balance. So that is pretty much all that I have, other than once again thanking Lori and Pam for all of your assistance. I should say about the student activities, when Pam came on, it was pretty messy, and she has done a great job cleaning those up. So it's made my job a lot easier. So.
Tim, could we go back to page 15?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I was doing something else on a different page.
Totally.
I hadn't caught up. Can you explain that 12% thing again that you said we wanted 12%?
So, yeah, actually, and just to be sure, the minimum fund balance policy, you're familiar with it.
Correct.
So, the fund balance policy says at June 30th, 2017, the district will have an unassigned fund balance of at least 12% or approximately $800,000. That $800,000 was an estimate, but the goal was to have a fund balance that would be adequate enough to cover 12% of the expenditures. It was close.
So was it like 11.9?
It was like 11.9.
This got rounded up to 12? Is that
Yeah.
higher than 12?
I wasn't going to put decimals. It is. Yeah.
Your math is good.
Yeah.
Your math is good.
Good checking.
Thank you. That's
No problem.
That was my question.
So we hit the target, and so because you have that our policy there,
Yeah.
what does it read for? Remind all of us.
Yes.
15%.
We're supposed to get to 17. I can go ahead and read it. Tim, can you?
For 2018 or
Yeah.
so for
Read
June
the next
30th,
one.
2018, the district will have an unassigned fund balance of at least 15%, and June 30th, 2019, 17%.
Okay.
So
Yep. I just want to make sure we reminded ourselves we are moving in the right direction.
absolutely.
Definitely.
Yes.
But we
Ways
still have a little ways to go. So, and up here, same thing on page 15. 1 month of expenses. This is just for informational, saying it's 8% will get us pay bills for a month. So that's what this. So that's, Carrie's our new board member. So I just want to make sure, because I don't think you've seen this before. You've never been in.
I was in Dan's position last
Last
year,
year,
so I
true.
listened
True.
from the sideline,
Right.
but didn't have the right in that position to
Yeah.
ask questions or
Right.
anything. So this is the first time that I've seen it as an official board member.
So yeah, Lori.
Do you mind if I ask Tim a question? Is
Please.
that based on a school year or a calendar year?
School. Yeah. Well, it's a calendar year. So 1 divided by 12.
Okay, that's
roughly
kind of, because
8%,
there's
yeah.
been some questions sometimes as whether, because obviously in a school year, we have more expenses because of teacher salaries.
Sure.
Mhm.
And that's why I just always try to set my mind and
Mhm.
make sure I know what the number means, so.
Just trying to put it in numbers that we
Yep.
can understand,
Yeah.
I guess, but you know, a month is 8%,
Mhm.
So
so
this was as of June 30th,
Yes.
2017.
We had
So this is all about
more
the
than a
last
month's
year.
fund balance.
Yes.
Month
In
and
our,
a half.
Month and
in
a
our
half.
fund balance.
yes.
Month
And
and
our
a half.
goal next year is to have 2 months worth.
Uh,
no,
close.
15.
No, not
Closer.
close, 7.
1 3/4 month.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got it. I'm following. We were $6,000 shy though. We do have to watch.
Yeah,
the
I'm,
pennies.
I'm very happy. I commend
Yeah, they're doing
Lori,
great work.
Lori, working with Dr. Crandall and everybody in the district office, Tom, Pam, because they're the ones that are keeping, you know,
keeping tabs on us.
keeping tabs on everything, which is really important, to be able to do this with all of them.
We've gained, 2 years ago, we were at
And Dr.
8% too, which was really scary.
Yeah.
Which is like keeping us running for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
One small thing away from disaster.
Uh-huh.
So informationally wise, Tim, this is what we just went over.
That and the thicker bound document that's the financial statement. All of the funds that I went through, those roll up into basically the financial position of the district. So
And then the thinner one is our student
activities, yes.
Just so the board knows in the end. We'll get those.
So when I skim all this, I
If you have an
get,
issue with sleep at night,
First thing in the morning.
Dan,
Start our day.
the entire job is almost entirely just the light reading.
Very exciting stuff.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2016-17 audit report as presented tonight.
I will second it.
Any other questions for Tim or? Okay.
it just
I would
says
like
as
to commend
stated.
Tim's presentation and that it was fairly understandable. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Fairly understand.
Wow.
It was. I
That's a
mean,
really big compliment
From
Tim.
Deb. That's
No,
a
but
big
we had a year where we didn't get, what are they talking
Yeah.
about? It was like,
I'd
but
like
it's
to
been much better the
simplify
last
things.
how many years. But
And then
yes.
as I just want to reiterate, as Tim already mentioned, Lori's efforts do an outstanding job along with Pam and Tom, doing great work in the district office to get us through
Go team office.
continuing.
Great.
All right.
Tim has taught me a lot every year.
Well, and just what he said at the beginning, there wasn't adjustments like there was last time. I mean, that speaks loudly of your work.
I looked at all of last year's and tried to do them on my own before he got here. I mean, that's really the
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
checklist I have, is go through last year's and see what we did.
Great.
All right.
Good job.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Now we have to do the vote because our discussion. Any more discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. It's not 6 o'clock yet, so we're gonna continue on.
We're trying to for this.
Yep,
We're gonna go 9.5.
5.
so we have to go to 9.5, yes. And that was the third reading of the ISD 166 wellness policy.
And that is in your act, I believe both are in your packet, the red line version, which have all the changes indicated, and then the cleaned up version, which will be the one, if approved by the board, will be the one that will be posted on our website for our policies.
So is today the day we approve?
Yes, this is our third reading.
This is the voting,
So at
yes.
this point, really, it's, are there any questions from the board regarding the review of the changes? Majority of these were the recommendations coming from our wellness committee, version of those. And they seem very reasonable and something, as mentioned, that we talked about before, attainable. We're not going to have beverage police one building with the state, the guidelines that we put in place. The other is just having our food audit that individual also reviewed our policy, and that was one of the comments made to us in the district office, is you wanna make forward progress. You don't wanna go from, one step to all of a sudden, the max. And so we are making forward progress with this policy, the version of this, and then the next time we revise it, we'll make more progress.
Will we be revising on an annual basis?
Not necessarily, but definitely could be.
Well, I know there's been an awful lot of work put into this, a lot
Yes.
of people.
A lot of good work.
It really feels like it's.
And heard that we still have a lot of support with some of the community agencies. Obviously, Maren mentioned that in their community comments, which is great to have.
Questions or? No. So then,
I had found one verbiage
Oh,
Yeah.
mistake somewhere, but I I wrote it, this is
What's the problem with not having
a week
pink
ago,
right?
and
You
I
can highlight it.
didn't write it down, but it wasn't much,
just kind of like
it was
a
like
proofreading
an Esco's
item?
office, right,
Okay.
which is nothing. I mean,
if
we
you
can,
find it,
we can always fix it.
we can fix something like
Yeah.
that probably with the board. And it is a policy, and the board has authority over all the policies, so if there's a need, we can always have it brought again in front of the board. So this is the recommendation.
So, I was gonna say, so, is this your recommendation?
I'll make a motion to approve the wellness policy.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And thank you to Maren and Mabel, that's her little one over there.
Future student.
And thanks to all the district staff that worked on that policy.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, 9.6, bullying investigation training update.
So that'll be Dr. DeWitt will present to the board.
Thank you. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, Mr. Hoffman, school counselor, and myself had the opportunity to go to a training in Duluth put on by Minnesota Department of Education in regards to bullying, harassment, those kind of things in the school. And it was a training involved investigation, policies, and practices with that. So we thought it was a good time of year to go to that. We went to it as a day-long event held. I'd never been there before in my life. It was a pretty neat facility. I think it's called Fitchers or something like that.
Thickers, yeah.
So it was pretty to have a training in that place, but we went there. I think I have a few takeaways to present to the board from that. Based on the MDE trainer and our review of our policies, we have great policies in place. Our practices are very, very good practices. They can always make them better. And we had some discussion there, and then in discussion with administration, Mr. Hoffman, school counselor, and looking at that. A few things we're going to be putting into place we started this past week to make them a little bit better. You've already been aware of the diversion program. That's in addition to the consequences we have. We have good consequences. The diversion program is one more thing we can do to somebody that makes that terrible mistake and bullies or harasses someone. One thing that we're putting into place now is a more formalized record of check-ins. We've always checked in with the victim afterwards to see if what we've done has stopped it or if it's continued. What we just simply did is created a record sheet now. And we've always done check-ins, but now the person that's assigned to do the check-ins records it on the sheet and turns it into administration. That makes sure we know what happens. We also received some suggestions from the training at Duluth that talked about check-ins for the family. And so we've added that to the sheet as well. So along with checking with the victim from this point on, besides administration calling the families both at the initial part of the incident, the staff member that the student is most comfortable with communicating with is also checking with the family at the start of the process, and then after the check-ins are finished, they talk to the family again to say, hey, either another incident's happened and we're doing another action, or nothing's happened, the victim feels okay, We're finishing it at this time, let us know if there's any other problems. And the trainer suggested that by doing that step, the family's brought into the loop and they know there's a connection to the school and that things have actually occurred instead of feeling like things haven't. So we put that step into place. And then between the administrative team, the counselor and social worker, we also put into place a victim tracking form. And what that is, we have an online system for all of our students we call Infinite Campus, and it tells you grades and schedules and what they're doing. And it also is a place for us to record behavior. And so if myself or Mr. Nelson or anybody, Dr. Crandall around the building is working with a student that got in a fight or did something on the playground, before we assign a consequence, we always look them up in the system to see, is this your first mistake? Is this your second mistake? Because then we know how severe we're going to respond to that. We haven't had that for a victim, so now we have a form that we have. So if we're talking with a student and doing an investigation with the student, maybe this is the first time that Johnny has picked on, if the victim's name is Bill, this is the first time Johnny's picked on Bill. Well, last week, Abigail picked on Bill too. And so we know that Bill has been the victim of 2 incidences. And when you have 2 administrators in the building, or foregone Dr. Crandall or the counselor doing, that's a valuable tool. So we put that into place, which I think will be helpful. The last thing we did to improve the practices, we haven't introduced to the students yet, but Mr. Hoffman and Ms. Sandstrom have almost finished tweaking it, but we're creating an anonymous student reporting form. And so students have always been able to report to us, but we're going to have it done in such a way that they can use their phones to send in a report or do a little anonymous thing, because sometimes they don't want to actually come talk to you that something's happened. And sometimes a student can kind of shut down if they've been picked on and don't want to tell you, but the person sitting next to them saw that. And so we're hoping by giving the student body in grades 6 through 12, this tool will get some more real-time information of these things happening. So those are a couple things we brought back out of the training.
It sounds like good things.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah,
I
it
think
sounded
they're great.
fantastic.
You always get great ideas.
Yeah. So they actually looked at our policies and procedures. They actually looked at what we do.
No,
Did they?
they
or did you guys come back?
they
Okay.
present
They
what
present.
the in 2017.
Yep.
This is what we're recommending that
Okay.
everybody does.
Okay.
We looked at that and said, okay, we're
And so
doing
you
that, we're
compare.
doing that, we're doing that, and we asked them about this and that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
Great.
know the board's talking about that lately and things.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Minutes work for you?
Oh,
Okay.
Sorry.
No. 9.7 Diversity Committee report. Okay.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna stay here, because folding chairs and my.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so just to bring everybody up to date, the diversity committee was actually approved for formation in the spring of 2017. We had our first meeting just prior to the start of the school year, and we've had 4 meetings so far. Our next meeting is actually December 19th, so next Tuesday. Right now, the committee has 22 members, 17 are staff, and 5 are community members.
Julie,
Yeah.
do you want to just introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Julie Bishop. I'm a special education teacher here at the school, and I'm also the co-chair of the diversity committee for ISD 166. So the diversity committee has 3 priorities: staff training, student training, policy review, and development. We had our first fire training, we discussed at the last school board meeting, part of the Department of Ed. We had that last week, and we have 3 more fire training scheduled before the end of the school year. We also have a group of Cook County Middle School and high school students that will be participating in a training at Two Harbors High School on January 26th. This student training is hosted by ISD 381, and it's a civility conference. And it's designed to help students become leaders and become the agents of change from within the building. The nice thing is there's actually going to be about 20 different schools represented and about 500 students. And we are going to be having about 20 to 25 students from the middle school and high school that go down and participate in this. We'll also have 4 teachers that will go along as well. And what we're hoping to do is get those students, basically get them comfortable in a leadership capacity to actually help with our own Cook County Social Justice Conference that will be happening here March 9th. That's a half day at school, and the elementary school this conference is going to be primarily for middle school, high school. The elementary school is going to be doing their own activities that are developmentally appropriate in the areas of social justice. At this time, we have 10 teachers, 3 classes, AP Environmental Science, AP Physics, and Native American Studies, 3 organizations, the Violence Prevention Center, Sawtooth Mountain Clinic in Outfront, Minnesota, and 1 person from the Grand Portage community as well that have already stepped up and said that they're willing to present at this conference. They will all be interactive sessions. Students will go to 3 different 50-minute sessions throughout the day, and then there'll be a keynote speaker that makes up that 4th 50-minute session, and that's our last scheduled half day for the school year. So there'll be roughly 64 sessions that go on throughout the day. Some of the sessions obviously will be repeated. Students will be given choice, and we'll handle it a lot like we do with school choice right now as far as what classes they sign up for. They'll have to rank their top choices. So about 2 or 3 weeks before the conference happens, they'll get their chance to rank their order of different sessions that we have going on. We're still soliciting for some more presenters. Megan Robelke and I were on WTIP earlier this week and did an interview basically soliciting for more volunteers. We've sent out some different emails to different community members that have asked to be notified that this is going on as well. And we have an application for deadline of January 2nd to get some more, basically anybody who has an area of expertise, it's like, let us know, because we'd like to have a few more sessions. And although we might not be the first school district to have a social justice conference, from everything we've been able to tell, we're the first ones in greater Minnesota that have had a session like this. It's the entire day, so we'll revamp the entire day for that. And to give you an idea, we've had such a great response to this. At this point, out of those roughly 64 sessions, we only have 4 open blocks. So the students have really been stepping up to the plate. We've had several of them say, what can I do to help out? The classes have stepped forward saying we'd like to do it as a class. We've had individual students, the Unified Club that's here at the school, they're going to be doing a session as well. So there's a lot of student participation. So we're hoping to have about 1/3 of it's going to be student-led sessions. Then there'll be about, I don't know the exact math, but there'll be another percentage that'll be teacher-led sessions. And then it's also going to be some different, like Outfront Minnesota will be coming from Minneapolis. Violence Prevention Center obviously is here, as well as Sawtooth Mountain Clinic. And Grand Portage is going to be doing at least 1 session block, so each hour they'll be doing a session and potentially a second. They're just soliciting, who do they want to have participate and what sessions that they like to lead. To give you an idea, we're going to have, there's 1 person here at the school who was adopted. She's going to talk about her adoption story and what it was like to be adopted from a foreign country and come to America. We have other ones that the AP Environmental Science class is going to be doing one on basically the biology and race and how that has evolved over time. Looking closely at ourselves is another session. And these sessions, some of these sessions, the high school students will participate, the middle school students will participate, but they're not necessarily going to mix. So we're going to keep them age appropriate. So the upper grades will be together, the middle school will be participating, and they might go to the exact same session, but just in a different hour. So they'll be grouped as well. So it's definitely evolving. We're going to be presenting at every school board meeting leading up to the conference, because it'll be a big radical change that we don't think that has ever happened, definitely not in this region of the state. So we're pretty excited, and like I said, the outpouring from the students and the teacher and the community so far have just been overwhelming and been fantastic. So any questions?
Great.
All the great work.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot of work.
Very excited. That
What's
sounds
the date again in March?
great.
It is March 9th. It is a Friday. It is our last half day of the school year. We're hoping to make this the first annual. What we'd like to have happen is this will be a half day session, and what we'd like to do is have something similar but slightly different in the fall as an all day, and then in the spring have a half day, and then the next fall do an all day, and then so you can see the routine. Just because it's one of those things that society is changing. We recognize that. Let's stay with the times. we can keep moving forward.
There are more kids every year. And kids grow over the year.
And they're wanting to discuss these issues and they want to be involved in this. So it's been great to just watch them. And some of the kids that I wouldn't think, some of the younger grades are just like, but I want to talk about it, I want to do this, can I lead that session? So it's very interesting to see, and especially with the Civility Conference coming up in 2 Harbors, we've had a lot of students have expressed a lot of interest in that as well.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Thanks. So do we wanna take a 2-minute break? Do you wanna,
I can probably go through mine.
do you wanna do your goals,
And two.
Yeah.
goals report? Okay,
So the goals report, the first one is our positive school community climate, conducive for student learning, effective teaching, community pride. Huge part is looking at our positive cultural change, and nice to have the presentation, so I didn't have to do it. So Diversity Club obviously is doing some outstanding things, along with the training that Dr. DeWitt and Mr. Hoffman went to. So continue to move forward in that respect, and then of course the community storytelling series has begun, and we will continue to have those as mentioned before. In the area of academic achievement for all students, we have another LSI training coming up, and I say that that's more for the staff, and so they're going to be looking at core instruction, I believe, is the area that, looking at how to effectively put kids into groups within your classroom. It's just, once again, as like with anything, we can always get better. We've got great staff. We can get better. Looking at those, we have a leadership team formed, and they just attended a training on December 4th. And Betsy Georgeson, shout out to the whole staff what's going on at those meetings, and so that's being shared as well, so it's not just held to that small leadership team. And then QComp has also been working forward. A lot of their peer reviews have been completed already halfway through the year. A lot of teacher evaluations by Dr. DeWitt and Mr. Nelson have been completed, so teachers are getting feedback on what they're doing and how they can move forward in their development, which will, of course, benefit our children in the end. And then effectively manage, you just heard our audit report. Our office staff is doing outstanding work as far as being effective there, and we've met our probably 0.02% off of meeting our 12% goal for the fund balance there. And then the food audit, like I said, we just received it back, so at the January meeting we can share with the board the update as far as what the progress is and what those findings were in the food audit. We just didn't have enough time allowed to be able to get it prepared for tonight's meeting.
Any questions on the goals report from anybody? And with that, it is 6 o'clock. So now we, this is where we do our truth and taxation presentation.
So we need to
Ms.
suspend the regular board meeting, so someone
Let
needs
me
to make
go
a
back
motion
here.
for that.
Okay, so we,
Make a motion to suspend.
thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, and so we are suspending our regular meeting for the 6 p.m. truth and taxation. And all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Ms. Mack.
Well, the computer, I had it already. It decided to go to sleep on me, I believe. So it'll come up in a minute.
Where's Greg?
Yeah, move that needs to be, put it on the floor or something.
Careful, he will.
That's not ours.
It's coming up. It's turned off.
Arrowhead. What, you wanna light up? Popcorn thing? Oh, she has.
Oh, great.
Let me turn this off.
First things first.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Pam. Mine's the flash drive. Okay. Thank you,
It's
Pam. It's the flash drive, and I don't know what's on it. So I have some printed copies. Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So much easier.
Here's my phone back, okay. Yep, there's this. So, I don't know if anyone else would like one. You know, it appears nobody showed up to really talk about their taxes, cause
I
this is.
believe Dan Shirley's in the audience.
Yeah,
Questions
Ted
about
Shirley might be the one who.
his business property.
Might have, Lori Backlund might have a few words about her taxes that went up. But most of mine went up due to the valuation of property, but this is an opportunity for the public to hear what the school has done for taxing entity and what in general, the school is doing to affect their taxes. This year, the school district tax levy is going down by 1.1%. And you know what, Pam, if you go to my H drive, it's on my H drive, so we can get to it that way. So, and it's for the school district portion only. The other taxing, go to, scroll down to lab, the business manager items, right there, and then left, open the folder, levy, down to levy. And then TNT files at the top, that top folder there. And then the top one, thank you. So, I didn't realize we would actually be logging into my desktop. So this discussion is, there's several taxing entities on your taxes, the county, the city, the school district, and then below the school district, if you look at your tax bill, it has other taxing entity, but it looks like the school. It is not the school. It is the EDA, and it is the hospital. And I think there's one other acronym which I don't even know what it is. Brady told me, but I know we've had people show up other years to ask that question, and then it has not been ours. So, the third page, the levy cycle. I've used this chart probably, several different budget and levy presentations. We certify the final levy today, hopefully. Property owners then pay taxes through May 2018 and October 2018, based on what we do today. And then we get most of the funding in fiscal year 2019 for the school. So we're always kind of behind, or we're doing things forward out in the future, but then we're getting the money kind of after the fact in the future. This chart, levy comparison by levy category, that chart right there that Pam has up on the screen. We'll go through each one of these, but that shows the total levy versus last year. The red bar is the current one versus last year's, and it's going down just a tick mark. And several of the things that happen in the levy, the school doesn't control. It's based on student population, it's based on what we actually spent in some categories. There's catch-up, there's pre-recognition items, and kind of all washes out to the bottom. And some of the things we can affect, some of the things we don't really have a choice on what they're doing. So I choose to go through each one of these categories because I feel like that's the easiest way to break it down. If you look at the next slide, over the years, the school district typically tries to go down, but there's some times where, for example, last year we had the 2 questions on the ballot, and that affected our levy by 54%. Your individual taxes might not have gone up that much because it was spread across other taxing entities like seasonal rec. By doing that second bond question for the $6.5 million construction, that got spread across more residents, so it didn't really affect each individual by the same amount. Got spread across a lot of the seasonal rec who typically don't pay as much on the school tax levy. So it was a great way for us to get some of the building projects done, which helps increase our school value to the community, and it gets shouldered across several residents and not just the homesteaded residents here. So anyhow, pay 18 levy is down 1.1%. The amount or the percent of that, next one, voter approved versus other. You can tell the voter approved looks like it's about 37%. There's a lot of other things going on in the levy that the voters don't really even have any chance to impact. Excellent. So as I break down each one of those categories, the referendum market value of the voter. So this is that first little column, and summary of that change for that category. Who pays in that category? Homesteads, commercial, agricultural, and apartment buildings. The previous voter approved levy expired with the Pay 15 levy. And I think the last year's election now is taking effect in this levy. It results in an amount of $391,695, which is down slightly since last year. And this is based on our pupil enrollments, so any adjustments in our ADM and pupil enrollments will affect that number. Beyond that, we don't really affect it. And these funds are what we use for our general operating expenses. So these funds are what's going to help drive our fund balance policy and help us get to that point for the 17% for fund balance policy. They're also a lot of what we use for paying teachers, paying bus drivers, our general expenses to run the school. So, next one, team. Summary of levy changes for that RMV other category. The people that pay on this category are homestead, commercial, agricultural, and apartment buildings. It's based on the number of pupils. It includes prior year adjustments and equity adjustments, and the decrease is approximately 32,121 over last year.
Another way to look at RMV are the people who live here all the time.
Yeah.
That's really what RMV, the businesses and such.
And then net tax capacity. So who pays in this category is all taxpayers, including seasonal rec. NTC other student achievement. So there's multiple level categories inside of this chunk. They combine, there's adjustments going up and down. They combine for about a $22,000 increase. Reemployment is one that we can't, we're guessing on what that's gonna be. It went down 8,000. That's based on a teacher that may go and collect unemployment. That actually automatically gets put into our levy, whether we want it to or not. That's where it goes. It went down 8,000. If something happens and that number goes up during this year, next year might be an adjustment and it might go back up. So it's based on actual plus our, Dr. Crandall and I try to guess at what that number is going to be. So we're not trying to put extra money in there or take extra money out. We try to hit that number on exactly, and where it shakes out, we get adjustments during the course of the next levy. Same thing with career tech and prior year adjustments. That's going up. Long-term facilities and prior year adjustments, that's going up 40,000. Operating capital in prior year, that went up 4,600.
Well, can we go back, the long-term facilities, That's actually also based off of a formula in legislation.
Yep.
And this is the last year that it's actually going up. We are now at the top formula. And so we shouldn't see a real large increase next year in that area.
Right. It kind of
Unless there's some
levels
large
off
health and safety. It levels off now.
Right. Facilities and equipment adjustment, that's a decrease. And then several other miscellaneous categories were lumped together. They're too small to even list on here. Next page, summary of levy changes for community service. If you notice our chart, that says a big 0 on it. It's not actually a 0, but who pays for it is the taconite relief funds offset the costs that our taxpayers would have paid. So, being that we're a taconite district, that amount gets reimbursed to us, so our taxpayers aren't hit with that amount. So, it is based on the county population, which they update about every 10 years. We could ask them if we think our population went up. We could ask them to do an early census for this levy category. I'm not so sure it makes that big of a difference right now. You know, if we had some surge in the county that we know about, we could do that. But the community service levy is decreasing approximately 15,845, and it's largely due to ECFE. So that's a big chunk of what that money covers is ECFE adjustments over the years. Our community ed, pretty much all of our community ed funds come through this. Okay. And then debt service. Tim touched upon this during his audit presentation. Who pays all property, including seasonal recreational. Debt service voter, that's the debt service that the voter approved. It's going up by 4,318. And debt service other, I don't know if you remember Steve Pumper came up a while ago and we did a refunding bond. That's saving taxpayers $95,000 over 7 years. So that is decreasing in the debt service other category. So we're still seeing the effects of that refunding bond. Okay. So the levy as a portion of our overall revenue budget, it's less than 25%. So we had a lot of other revenues to run the school district that's not even on this levy. It comes through the school, through the state, through federal, different funding from Minnesota Department of Ed. It's kind of an interesting chart to see that. Okay, so
I just want to point something out that I didn't have in here, but it was mentioned already that because we're technically a school district, so that's based off of the amount that we receive for our district is based off of the 3-year average. That average, production average, that average has been going down. We're very fortunate it still covers our community ed component, which definitely, in the end, it saves our taxpayers.
Yep.
Just want the board to be aware of that, so that could change.
So when you hear those taconite numbers and production, it does affect us, even though we're not living on the range with them. So that is the tax portion of tonight's presentation. The budget overview is also a required element as part of Truth in Taxation meetings to look at our 2017-18 budget overview. Go ahead, one more, yeah. That's okay. My little heading somehow got shifted, but. So this chart is just a high level by fund showing our revenue and expenditures. If you look at it, it shows a large deficit on the bottom line. That's because we had that $6.5 million in Fund 6 that we received the revenue last year, but we're spending the majority of it this year. And so that is what skews that. if you look at, the second bullet, funds 1, 3, and 5 is what we make up what the state calls the general fund. The sum of those revenues and expenditures is a positive revenue number. So that's kind of plays into the fund balance policy and where we're going this year, and hopefully we can affect our bottom line again this year to march in that direction. But right now, with the budget that's in there, and there will be some revisions, I have some revisions already that, there was something I didn't catch from like the math curriculum that carried into this year, so that'll be a revision that I'll pull in. Contracts, where we settle different contracts. Those types of revisions, I'll run another budget update. Because basically this budget was set in June. And since then, we've hired people in the summer that, you know, to replace teachers that have retired. I feel like we were conservative when we put those people in, so I don't think it will affect us that much. I think that it's actually has a positive effect to us, so that number could even get better. That will be coming in future months. And then Fund 25 represents the other post-employment benefits trust, which is what's paying for retirees agreements that we've had in the past. Some of those teachers that have retired where we've said the district would pay for a portion, not all, but portions of their insurance. So that's what Fund 25 represents. And we are actually having another actuarial done this year. So that'll kind of update some of those numbers in Fund 25.
Give us a clearer picture on where exactly we're at with it.
Right, yep. And
Does that account have like a sunset, like at some point? Or how did,
so
You know?
right now it's a trust, and so
Okay.
I can pull money out of that account to reimburse the district for things that we've agreed to pay for a post-retirement. And basically the agreements that we have in place will deplete that account.
okay. So if we made any additional
Agreements.
we would,
It wouldn't,
it wouldn't.
right at this time, would not be
Okay.
coming out of Fund 25.
Okay.
Because that trust doesn't have enough.
Doesn't have enough money,
Yeah.
okay.
So ours is actually revocable trust. Some districts have irrevocable trusts, and we are not into that. So at some point when that money's gone, that money's gone.
And during that
Right.
review, we can get a little bit more specific information for the board. For example, if there are, so many staff that still qualified to have access to that funding scheme, don't we? We get that or not?
There are no staff by contract anymore that qualify for that severance piece of that account.
Oh, that individual, last person retired.
The last person retired.
And so that's kind of my question, right? So.
That last person retired
Yes.
that had that severance.
Yes.
It was a prior contract, and then any of the future contracts they've been putting into their 403Bs instead.
Mhm.
And so that is,
Okay.
but the retiree agreements that we have
Yeah.
in place will eventually deplete that account.
Where'd that money come from to start with?
What's that?
Where's the money?
You know, that was before my time, and I don't know if that was something that came on a levy in prior years. I'm not really sure. How did they create that revocable trust? Is that was something from the actuarial
yeah.
studies done when the state said you need to do this
And there was like this small window
of time that we had.
pre my time as superintendent, that they had this small window that districts got on board so that they could do this. So I'm not sure if it was a combination of levy and state funding
Right.
or not. We can look into that to get the information if you'd like to.
I just wonder, like you said, if it depletes, at some point, at what point does it deplete that? And then what do you do?
So it's
What's the
Well,
plan?
Our contracts do not have anything in place that says the district will pay for their insurance post-employment.
Okay.
Some of those districts on the range that have
Oh, they had some that
paid,
until death
till
do us
death,
part.
which
yeah,
we don't
were.
have that.
right.
There
We do
were,
not have
or
that.
till an age 70,
Yes.
and a lot of people.
So had that been in our contracts at the time they created this fund, we might have had a different number that we had to put in that account to
Okay.
begin with.
So
So
they have
that's what
another
that account
district
was
where we have
created
this
for.
huge list of names, and every year if they retire, we cross their name off.
No, okay, that's all, thank you.
So then the last slide is fund balance, and as we heard Tim say, our general fund total $734,947. I feel like that was, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year when we made our budget that that's where we would be, I'd be surprised. I knew it was going to go up. I didn't think it would go up by that much. So I think a big part of that is during the year, Dr. Crandall being able to say, no, we can't do that. Being able to say no to certain things, being able to figure out different ways to do things. The other big part of that is we get a lot of donations to the district. A lot of money comes into the district. ALI funds, EIP funds have allowed us, which I don't even know what those acronyms stand for. ALI.
Applied Learning Institute.
Yeah.
And Educative,
Innovative
Education Innovative Partnerships.
Partners. Those donations have allowed us to do a lot of things in industrial tech area.
And
Telepresence system. So those-
62,500 this year for staff development. When I
Yes.
talk about LSI,
Yes, it's
62,500 for our staff, for our teachers,
For staff
amazing.
development.
for staff development.
So that is, those funds have helped enable our fund balance to go up, so.
Yeah, if you look at if everything stays great and we don't have to dip anywhere, you know, you're looking at close to $250,000 to go towards fund balance, which would put us close to $1 million.
And a big part of that is because of the referendum that was passed for
So we
people's student.
thank you to the voters.
Yeah, so that's a huge thank you to the voters because it's taken some of the pressure off the board to figure out how we're gonna pay for a car that breaks down or a bus that breaks down or something like that, so.
And when will that run out?
That was a 6-year.
Was it?
It was a 6-year approval, so this is our second year of it on the levy.
Okay.
So. And that's, you know, when we go for, if we end up, when it runs out, do we go for another one? Those are all questions to be looked at further down the road, so. So, the 3 reasons, these are pretty much the same thing that were in the audit. Increased general education revenues, additional donations, student fees and miscellaneous revenue, and revenue from state and federal sources. I'm guessing it's student numbers. If we get more students, we get more aid.
We were assisted by being accepted for the voluntary
Pre-K.
pre-K.
Yes.
That helped us. I don't know if you noticed when we were looking at those numbers, it was like 4 and 3 and 5 and then 23. So
And
that was a
those
large.
kids count towards general ed, where they never, our preschool kids never did before. So that voluntary pre-K,
Dr. DeWitt's doing a great job managing
having
that
those
for us.
kids in that program,
And Miss Passing.
yes,
Is that right?
help create, because sparsity, transportation sparsity, compensatory, those numbers are all affected by those additional voluntary pre-K kids being in our general ed population numbers. So that all of it's not just the 6,000 per pupil unit, it actually affects us more than that. But anybody have any questions from all those taxpayers that are at the county meeting and not at our meeting?
Well, they'll watch, I
So it's
know.
wide open.
Yeah.
Greg, I don't know if you have a question. And
And if people are watching, feel free, if you have questions on your tax statement, if you don't mind sharing it with me, I can help go through that and explain to people where the increase came from Kathy Erickson at ARC has offered to do that every year that I've been here, so.
Great,
Thank
Lori.
you.
Thank you very much.
Well done.
Sorry about the computer, I thought I had it ready,
To reconvene our regular meeting.
Okay.
Make a motion to reconvene.
That is at 6:38.
28.
6:20.
28, sorry, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. White.
Okay, and all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We've got 3 of us here, that is a quorum. Board member Jansen, stepped out, so, it's just the 3 of us here. So the next thing we need to do is to approve the 2017 payable 2018 tax levy at $1,723,667.70. I will make a motion.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Just to note, that's a decrease. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Now we are gonna jump back. 9.9, right?
Yes.
Bond update.
So on the bond update, which is in your packet there, Lori's been doing a nice job as far as putting some dates on there, so nothing in security and technology transpired, but in the area of the re-roof project, we did have some bills there with our architect for the starting to look at the research for the ACA re-roofing. Bus garage, we had some bills paid off there with Twin Ports testing, the other items with our architect as well. Nothing in vehicles. Deferred maintenance, nothing new this time around. And the other spot, we did have some other architectural, when we're looking at the, both the science lab and, actually, that was on the last one. So just the science lab this last time for the architect. So really just some architect things, but as,
Sometimes he puts those on the same bill, and I've been splitting them
Oh,
up between the
okay.
science lab and culinary arts. I've been sharing them in the 2 projects.
Mhm.
Sometimes he'll put those on the same bill.
I did share with the board earlier, Mr. Nelson, that you shared with me a picture of one of our buses in the garage, and that the
It's
garage
full.
door openers
It's full, so there's
is now full.
Every bus we have is.
One of the updates we did not have was the status on the heat, propane.
I talked with the fire marshal, the state fire marshal, who referred me to our local fire chief. He's now been in contact with North Shore Oil and basically told me he'll sign a variance to get us propane.
Okay, which means allowing the location of the propane tanks on a property. And so, do you have any updates? I know Mr. Getta was aware that they were supposed to have come on this week, but I know the storm may have caused
Yeah,
it
and
to.
I was gonna call Scott at North Shore tomorrow and find out how the conversation with Benny went.
Okay. Any other updates on the garage? That's our next step, is to get those tanks in place, and then the plumbing portion will take
Yeah, I
place, and
think
the electrical.
then our plumbing can be completed and we can, I think at that point, I'd like to put the rest of the project on hold. So we don't paint anything this winter, wait till spring and have everything done properly. We don't have to pull our buses out, have them painted.
Oh, with the
around our
weather now, yeah.
vehicles. So if we can get the plumbing done, then at that point I'd ask if we can put a stop to it till spring.
Yeah, and we had talked to the company Crawford, knowing that they needed to do there's some land work there as far as, and then the other pieces. The snow is now all over the ground, there's probably some nail screws and whatnot that need to get picked up.
And so we'll just withhold that final payment until.
Correct.
Yeah,
And they're aware of that,
Yes.
we
The project
talked to
will be
them
finished
a month
anyways.
in or so.
Perfect,
So,
great.
It would make a really good Christmas present, or Christmas card. Open up all the doors with the snow falling on the outside,
Buses.
and there are the buses shiny.
They're gonna start, that's.
That's
I
the
can
key.
sleep at
And you
night
won't
now.
have to scrape ice.
Great. Any other questions about bond things? Okay. 9.10 to approve the expenditure revenue report, November 2017.
So I'll let Ms. Backlund just share, I guess it's updated through,
Through the end of the month of November. So I always do that, it was one of the first things I do in the month when I balance our investment accounts, balance our checking accounts, then I update this. And one of the things to notice, the revenue, I'm going from memory here, the revenue is a little bit higher than last year. Thank you, Pam. The revenue in the general fund, if you look, last year at this time was 2.6 million. This year at this time is 2.1. You know, I'm thinking that that's gonna start coming in higher now that we're starting to get our tax money from this county, so for Fund 1. I know that there was quite a bit of tax payment that was paid.
Okay.
You know, and I feel like we're keeping expenditures somewhat similar. I mean, they're going up a little bit, but they're not. It's not something drastic. So.
Great.
And it's key to look at 1, 3, and 5 because Fund 6 is really skewing things. If you look at the total, Fund 6 we're spending the bond money. So 1, 3, and 5 is really the key. Any questions on it?
Mr. Gevel, I know as treasurer, I know you go over some of these reports.
Yeah, I haven't gone over it with Lori, but I mean, she always will let us know that it's so hard because you never know when something's coming in.
Right.
Some come in the 1st of December
Like
this year, November 30th last year.
like impact aid is a big. It's usually January, some years December, and it's usually $100,000 at a time. So.
Need a motion to approve.
I'll make it.
I'll second it. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 9.11 to set the January 2018 organizational regular meeting date. So we tentatively talked about this. But there has to be 30 days in between an appointment of a board member and actually seating the board member. So we can't we tentatively talked about the 4th,
Do it early.
January 4th. So we have to move it and
So the next, the following week, the middle week is when Carrie and I will be at MSBA.
yes.
And then, so now we're looking at that week of the 15th, and the proposed date is written down as the 16th, which is a Tuesday. A little different than what we're
Yeah.
accustomed to.
Well, what's going on Thursday?
Because I need to,
College visits.
yeah,
Okay.
I need to leave, and so I don't know if I will continue to be the chair, but to start the meeting, I will be. So my request is to do it on the 16th. And so I'm looking at availability and I'm looking, is that okay? Because it's important that we're all there. well, it's critically important that we're all there.
That's fine with me.
Okay,
Now you're thinking.
No, I'm just thinking. We have to get that word to Mrs. Jensen, because
Yes.
doesn't she have something on Tuesday? Or is it just a class she takes?
She teaches a lot.
Hmm.
I don't know, isn't it Tuesdays and Thursdays, or just
I think
Tuesdays?
that class, I believe, starts at 6:15 to 5, if you're on. I might be wrong.
Well, we can set it,
Tentatively,
we can
we can-
tentatively set it,
Yeah.
and then next week, we can work on solidifying that. Either
Okay,
that day
so-
or Wednesday, maybe.
Pencil in, please, the 16th, January 16th. And so we'll have the first part will be the organizational, you know, where we set officers and things, and then we'll just have our regular meeting, our regular January meeting. Okay? All right, 10.0 for, yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, please send us an email, please.
I'll remind you.
10.1, to approve a PK-12 interim principal, Dr. DeWitt. Officially.
So moved.
so seconded.
Okay.
So that'll go into effect January. When we get back from the holiday.
Great. Any discussion? Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay.
Did- Nope. It was a different.
Okay.
For a different time.
Okay. All right.
That wore me out.
He's keeping us guessing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. DeWitt. 10.2, to approve the hire of paraprofessional Elise McDonald at the wage of $15.30 per hour.
I gave you that handout there.
Oh. Yes. Okay. I will make a motion.
Second?
Discussion? Is this a replacement? Is this a new or addition?
We had a professional that reduced her hours, so she replaced those hours that person reduced by.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's 12 hours a week or something, which is fulfilling.
Yeah, it says 12 hours a week. Thanks. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 10.3, to approve hire of evening custodian Caleb Johnson.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I can second that. Any discussion?
Does this have to do with 10.5 then?
Correct.
Yes, it does. I was gonna say, you'll see, yeah, it does. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 10.4, to approve the hire of long-term middle school math substitute, Jill Erickson.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, discussion?
Yes, we got this for the first one. Should we not have them for the?
You should, that's my fault. The next couple of
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so, interview this week.
Yeah, we
Yes.
interviewed yesterday.
And so we interviewed, was it 3 or 4?
We initially had 4 candidates, one dropped out.
One
We had 3 candidates we interviewed. We had a panel of 5. Board members, Nancy was on the panel, myself, Ms. Ramberg from the math department, Ms. Nelson from the middle school, and then Ms. Santos from Grand Portage. Ms. Erickson was our top choice for this position.
And this was because last meeting, we accepted a resignation
Right.
from the math teacher, so this is a replacement to fulfill the year.
And then repost the position in spring for.
She has a community expert license. So that ends up with the BAA for
For wage.
wage.
Any other discussion?
Actually, I'm gonna get a little savings there. Just FYI for what we do.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 10.5, to rescind hire of evening custodian Roland Baird.
Make a motion to rescind.
Second.
Discussion?
So, offered a job. I believe he accepted, and so the board made the motion, and he rescinded. And so therefore, then we re-interviewed, or actually re-offered the position to the person we just hired.
Okay, all those in, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I believe we are at the end.
Correct.
We don't have anything else.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. I'll second that. And we are adjourned at 6:43. Or wait, we have to, oh wait, sorry. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, 6:43.